Now, welcome to our partner panel discussion, Factory to the Front Door, Made, Moved, Delivered. We have an incredible lineup of experts who will be diving into the world of logistics and manufacturing. Please join me in welcoming Abhishek Chakraborty, CEO, DTDC, Srinath Ravichandran, co-founder and COO, Zetwork, and Saahil Goel, MD and CEO of Shiprocket, in conversation with Shweta Punj. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Let's welcome them on stage with all the energy we can do.
Thank you, Parikshit, and thank you very much to our audiences who decided to stay back to listen to this session. We are a country that is in a hurry, right? And that's what we've been talking about all day yesterday and today, Rising Bharat. We are a nation that is really roaring and raring to go and grow. So much optimism. We had the Prime Minister yesterday express his vision, spell out his vision for India. We had the Foreign Minister this morning, Mr. Jaishankar, talk about India's growing soft power. I want to ask all of you a question. How many of you here have a quick commerce app on your phone? Can I see a show of hands? That's pretty much everybody. So that is us, right? हमको सब चीज जल्दी में चाहिए. We want everything very quickly. The 10-minute delivery, the e-commerce delivery disruption has come from India, and it has become one of the classic successful case studies for businesses across the world. In a country where we are, always battling traffic, कहीं पे भी टाइम से पहुंचना बहुत मुश्किल होता है, पर हमारी groceries 10 मिनट में आ जाती है. Right? So that is being made possible by the three business representatives here, the three businesses amongst several others in the country. We have with us Abhishek Chakraborty of DTDC, which is one of the oldest logistics company in the country. We have Saahil Goel, CEO and co-founder of Shiprocket, and we have Srinath Ravichandran of Zetwork. Well, let me begin by asking Saahil. Saahil, it's an interesting time. We are working with so many unknowns, and every day there is a new story that we wake up to. How are we looking at the logistics space, responding to the changed dynamics? We're seeing tariff lines being imposed. We're seeing a completely changed global scenario. How do you see that impacting Indian businesses?
See, I think there are two aspects to that, Shweta, and specifically since we're talking about global tariffs, there is an aspect of business impact, which is, I think, the one all of us are kind of trying to figure out. Is this a net positive for India in some way? Are there more changes coming, right? What happens to bulk versus individual parcels and de minimis? All of those questions are still outstanding. And I think the supply chain is also trying to figure out how it needs to respond because, while decisions can be made in seconds, it takes time for shipping routes, etc., to reorient. And, there's demand-supply patterns that are deep-rooted over years. All of that stuff is, to be honest, it's massive disruption. But, if the macro win for India here potentially is that there's more trade, from India to the world, then that's worth kind of investing time behind.
Srinath, you are in the manufacturing space, contract manufacturing, and currently the hope and the expectation is that with tariff lines going up, specifically for our competitors such as Vietnam and China, we will see a lot of that business moving to India. I want you to take us through the opportunities that you see at this point and the challenges.
Yeah, we are living in very interesting times, and the world for the longest time, over the last at least 2 decades, for global manufacturing is concerned, had only one answer, which was largely China, and Today, with everything that's happening on tariffs and in general, countries and companies thinking about not putting all their eggs in one basket, the world is looking at definitely solutions outside of China. That's where we as a country have an incredible opportunity. Over the last 30 days, the reciprocal tariffs and all of these conversations, I think, should only accelerate momentum towards more and more countries and companies looking at India as an important option in their global sourcing manufacturing footprint. We have always had incredible potential, but it's time for us also to get more aggressive, invest in capacities, and capture this lion's share of the change that is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years as far as global manufacturing sourcing is concerned.
I love the optimism. Abhishek, you have been in the business for over 3 decades. So the oldest company really on the stage. And you've seen several business cycles, right? How are you viewing this? Because, you know, this when there is a tsunami, and we are amidst a tsunami, it leads to a lot of destruction, but also renewal. How are you viewing this? I mean, are you viewing this as an opportunity, or do you think that it will get worse before it gets better?
See, I think let's look at a little bit of history to put this into context and see whenever such disruptions happened, what did it mean for India? And I can take us back to 1990, literally when DTDC was born. 1991 is when the opening up of the Indian economy happened. And you know that happened at the back of a crisis. India was at a point where we were literally looking at pretty grim circumstances. The ministers and the leaders at that point in time of the country took India down a path. And we know the globalization world that we see today for India was at some point in time kind of initiated then. You look at 2008-9 when the big financial meltdown happened. Everybody said it's a black swan event. It's going to bring the world crashing. The startup ecosystem that today we celebrate, of which all of us are a part, was pretty much born around the 2008-2009 period. You look at COVID as a crisis. The world was wondering how do we even get out of our homes. The e-commerce and the quick commerce that you referred to would not have been born or would not have got to the point. So my whole perspective here is every time these disruptive moments have come, it's a time for you to seize that opportunity. I think in these last 2.5, 3 decades, we've inadvertently seized the opportunity. I think now what we've been hearing over the last 2 days, and indeed that's the spirit of the new India that we all represent, we really want to seize these opportunities front and center. Whether that means we got to restructure our supply chains, look at products differently, look at technology and services differently. Indeed, make India a far more attractive place to not only invest, but to buy from, to source from, and also to deliver towards. Right. I think all of that is a mindset, and if that mindset is put in the right way, this is always going to be an opportunity. I call it the spirit of pragmatic optimism.
I think it's also the resilience, right? It's our Desi resilience. You know, when we talk about the opportunity that this presents for India, we've also undertaken several reforms, right? In the last few years, we've had GST, we've seen so much focus on building roads and highways. Just take us through how have those reforms really helped in your business in logistics? Because Saahil and I were having a chat, and one of the big concerns that were raised by businesses at some point were logistics management. The whole e-commerce revolution has happened because there's someone who's managing logistics, right? So let's take us through how has GST, the fact that now there's just this one tax across the country, how has that transformed ease of doing business? Or is it still a work in progress and you'd like to see more work being done on that so that you're able to really take this opportunity forward? Abhishek, you want to start?
See, I think clearly GST has been a very defining moment in India's history, economically, socially, but definitely if we talk about the logistics space, the fact that one nation, one tax meant that the hitherto borders of our states, which were impediments to movement of material and people and goods and services, once that got lifted, I think the speed at which we were able to move materials and the cost at which we were able to move materials has significantly improved. Earlier, every business, every brand had to maintain a totally different strategy for their warehousing, for their logistics, for their inventory. In every single state, at times even at a district level, you had to have piling up of inventories, which meant unnecessary cost and quality concerns were coming up as well. All of that has improved massively. The fact that
Can
India...
you share some numbers with us on how much, for instance, in terms of the time taken, how much?
I think on an average, if you take a combination of GST as well as the way in which the infrastructure on our road transportation has improved, a Delhi to Mumbai, which is the biggest and most important corridor between any two cities in India, which would average on a ground transportation would have taken you anything between 2.5 to 3 days to do transit, even in 2015 or 2016. In just a few months' time, we're going to confidently say that in 12 to 15 hours' time, you will be able to leave from a warehouse in the outskirts of NCR and reach Bhiwandi, outskirts of Mumbai. And that means you can have possibly next day services now being made possible on ground transportation,
Wow.
for which only air was the only choice. Now look at what that means for volumes, look at what that means for cost. I think it's phenomenal, and it's going to happen. It's not wishful thinking anymore. It's happening as we speak.
Fantastic. Did your father ever think that this is something that he'll see as he built the business?
See, I think he was very bullish about one thing. If India needs to grow, India needs to have Indians solving the logistical problems of India. It won't happen from any foreign entities coming in and setting up shop. And that's the larger theme I'd like to leave people with. Indians will solve Indian problems in a very Indian way. We will not follow somebody. We will leapfrog and get to what we need to get to. I think that's something he believed in. That's something DTDC as an organization has always believed in. And that's why we are still here in business and 35 years. And we don't call ourselves a 35-year-old company. We are a 35-year young company. And as young as India is, that's how young our aspirations and our possibilities to do things are.
Of course, 35 years is young by any standard. let's keep that. That's right. I'm loving the applause from the audience. Srinath, you work with a lot of MSMEs, about 10,000 MSMEs on contract manufacturing. You're making defense components. When we speak about the reforms that have happened in the manufacturing space, we've had a PLI, several PLIs in fact. We've had, again, a lot of investments that have gone into building roads and highways, tax reforms. Just take us through the journey. When you started out, you were mentioning you were working with, say, a couple of hundred MSMEs, and now that's gone up to 10,000. 30% of your business is actually in the United States. So how... just help us understand how has policy enabled this, and then going forward, let's also look at the pain points that businesses like yours face that need resolution going forward.
Yeah, we were talking about GST before. GST has also impacted the manufacturing industry. I'll talk about. My father was running a manufacturing business definitely in the pre-GST era. Back in the day, we used to have excise duties, and I don't know how many of you remember CST, CFOM, 2%, all of that. These used to be very, very cumbersome processes, for businesses which were transacting with a lot of MSME suppliers, particularly outside. If your business is located and your supplier's business is located outside your home state, then there is CST that is applicable. There's a lot of paperwork, So all of that has definitely improved ease of doing business, ease of sourcing even within the country, Back in the day, say capital equipment sourcing, there is, say, big companies, say like L&T, or say in Pune, there's Thermax. So they would always have supplier ecosystems surrounding the cities where they used to be based. Today, the manufacturing supplier ecosystem is more pan-India. A company in Chennai can definitely source components, get manufacturing outsourcing done with a vendor in Haryana thanks to GST and thanks to all the simplification of this paperwork. So coming to reforms itself, one definitive event that I can think of is the PLI movement that has happened, and the capacity creation that has happened in this country over the last 3-4 years, right? If you look at electronics, over the last 3 years, we've had 10x more capacities that have gotten created within the country. Yeah, the debate today is, all the assembly or, lower level value addition activities have definitely moved into the country. Otherwise, we were dependent on China or Southeast Asia or some other countries. So today there is definitely that Atmanirbhar movement that has happened in the electronic space at least. Now, as we speak, I definitely believe in the next 5 years, semiconductor is another sector where there is going to be a lot of indigenous Indian capacities that's going to happen. So all of this is leading to more and more reliance on our own manufacturing ecosystem. Now, what needs to happen further? We need to definitely focus on two most important things. One is backward integration. We have to move on from this and start celebrating more and more value addition happening within the country. Second is definitely skilling. I think, yeah, so we are going to capture all this market share from other countries and move all this market share to India, and there is more manufacturing activity that is going to definitely happen in India. But for us to move up the value ladder, we need to focus on skilling. And it is not just the government's problem, it is industry's problem. And this is where industry and government needs to come together and create en masse skilling opportunities. Otherwise, this is going to be an important risk that is going to challenge the manufacturing ecosystem today.
Let's also talk about, Sahil, the fact that we still have, what is referred to as regulatory cholesterol. We still have, customs clearance is still a challenge. So, what would you like to see the government do to enable that? Because we've outlined the opportunity, but the point is that are we ready to take on that opportunity? Because currently, even now, even with all the ease of doing business measures that have been announced and implemented, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, I think happy to answer that both from a domestic retail or domestic e-commerce perspective, as well as from a cross-border or export e-commerce perspective. And see, I think there's been leaps and bounds of movement in the last 10 years of us having been in this industry, whether it is the empathy for understanding what MSMEs or retailers, small retailers go through. The GST, the new GST regime, as everyone spoke, has obviously been a boon to speed of movement of goods. It's simplified filing, right? A lot of times, like, we forget that for businesses that are 10, 20, 50 lakhs a year in revenue, just filing from 2 locations itself with an APOB is a challenge, right? We forget that. They don't have an accounting team. So how do you manage, like, how do you help some of that stuff? From a global perspective, I think there's a very strong movement by the government, whether it is, and we see this working with them either through India Post or with DGFT coming up with export hub pilots and so on, where today I think the number is about 3 or 4 billion of e-commerce export from India. The target is 200 or 300 billion by 2030. So there's a 100x kind of growth assumed there. I'm saying even if we come halfway off that, that's massive. And I'm talking about e-commerce only. I'm not talking about bulk goods. And in that, there's obviously flow of goods, but then there's flow of information, which is all the way through, airport systems and then to the foreign clearance and customs. And how do you make that streamlined is a huge opportunity for multiple companies. Again, very focused on India, for India, and building for Indian businesses.
We are almost out of time, but very quickly, I want to ask you, Sahil, there's been talk about an IPO for Shiprocket, and currently looking at what we are seeing in the equity markets, are the plans still on?
See, I think I've said this before as well. We are planning to be a IPO-ready company and have been for about 18 months. And we think that it brings in a lot of discipline, governance, measurability, kind of long-term thinking, alignment from team members, investors, and all of that stuff. And that's been happening for a while. For the company's perspective, the IPO it's not a milestone in a sense of like, it is a milestone in the sense of achievement to some extent, but it's not the end. Like, in many ways, it's a reset to say, okay, this is the next, a couple of decades. And for us, it means immortalizing the company. It means institutionalizing what we've built and then, have it see through the next 100 years. So I think that for us happens now, 2 years later. 3 years later, it makes no difference to the.
But we are seeing a lot of movement in the logistics, in the delivery space. So are you hoping to, capitalize on that sentiment?
I mean, there's always, logistics is an area which is always going to be exciting in many ways. As unexciting as it appears, it's the magic behind everything that you do every day, from the shampoo bottle you consume to, the brick that builds your house. Like everything you can think about is
Sure.
logistics, whether it's quick or slow commerce. And India has got India 1, 2, 3, all of it together. So I just like it, there's always going to be some trend, right?
Srinath, same question for you. A lot of talk about Zetworks IPO. What can we share with our audiences here?
No, same, very similar answer. But we are working like we want to do it tomorrow. We're not rushing into it.
Okay.
It's the logical next step that a company of our scale, size, and diversity has to take. Thankfully, we're not under pressure that, हमें IPO करना है next month ही, next quarter ही, kind of a thing. But we are going about
But has
it.
Trump changed your plans?
No, there is no change in plans.
There's no change. So you
There
had
is
said
absolutely no
there
change
were
in
reports that it could come as soon as this year.
No. Talk to me. There's no change in plans. We are working with the same velocity to take the company public. And so this is a combination of input and external factors, right? Input though is 200%.
So very quickly, 30% of your business is coming from the US market. With Mr. Trump and his policies, is there an assessment of the impact that's likely to have on your business?
Short-term impact is confusion, right? Customers are confused. And when there is uncertainty, what people do, people pause decision making, right? And
Right.
And when decision making gets paused, there is going to be some slowness in that US business that we have. But long term, like I said, it could be a very, very net positive moment for India, and we are looking to capitalize that.
Okay. Very quickly, last question. What's the future for quick commerce? We are already in 10-minute deliveries. Where do we go from here?
I won't say we're going to do it in seconds. But what I would do like to highlight is that there's a whole space over there. What quick commerce has opened up for all of us is the thinking that we can get products faster, closer to the consumers. Not only everything needs to get delivered in 3 days, 5 days, but I think there's a beautiful space that's going to emerge, which I like to call as rapid commerce, where people can get many other products which do not need to get delivered at 10 minutes, but can be delivered in 2 hours, 4 hours, same day, but at a cost, at a price point at which it is good
But
for
we're
the seller.
already talking about iPhones also in quick commerce. We've already crossed many product categories.
Yeah, but I think it's an iPhone which sells at a significant price point, which is going to be much more costlier, hopefully, because of these tariffs. But we're talking about a whole basket of products that's out there. And also for those brands and businesses to be able to get it in the hands of consumers, not only fast, but also sustainably. And I think that's Rising Bharat. It's got to be
Sustainable.
fast, but it's also got to be sustainable. And that's what is the future of
All
the business.
right. Thank you so much. Rising Bharat will not only be fast, but also sustainable. And I think that's a very positive note to end this conversation with. A big thank you to all our panelists for joining us. Really the backbone of the India manufacturing story. The representatives of that industry are right here with you. Many thanks. Thank you so much.